Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show. And welcome to today's broadcast. We're broadcasting with my broadcast partner, Spirituality Gone Wild. And of course, you can also hear the show on the American Gumption Facebook and the American Gumption YouTube channel. So please subscribe and follow along. We come to you mostly 5 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week. And we do a live show from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern time, or 7 to 8 a.m. on the West Coast. And I have some shows and guests in England, the UK, and that's at 3 to 4 p.m. So tune in wherever you are in the big world. Alrighty, so today is Friday, November 6th, and today is show number 65. And I do have a guest, a return guest. Austin J. Haynes is coming back. He checked in on the road when he was in the midst of a month plus long trip across America. He was doing his own American Gumption thing, traveling around, meeting people, doing interviews. So he checked in from the road last time. I believe he was in Memphis, and today he's back home, and we're going to check in with him and find out how that event went, how the trip went. And he's got an event coming up in early December that we'll talk about. But we're going to talk about basically making like a flashpoint change in your life, doing something radical, doing something completely different, or making a hard turn one way or the other, so that you can either your personal life or your career, makes a new adjustment. And that's what he helps people with. Alrighty. And my monologue will be kind of a follow-up on what I had done with the monologue when Austin first appeared. And, but this time I'm going to put action with it. So the monologue title is Flashpoint plus Action. All right. So that's what I'll be talking about in just a minute or so. And then we'll get to Austin. Now, next week, we plan to come to you live 5 days a week, may only be 4. I haven't made up my mind yet, but Lauren Archer will be with us again, a second time guest. And we're going to continue the conversation about heart coherence. And she's going to do a meditation, and we're going to learn a little bit more about her hypnotherapy business. So anyway, but heart coherence is the main thing. And that science is really, people are beginning to understand that in the last 10, 15 years in terms of how the brain and the heart and the body all work in conjunction with each other. So we'll have that conversation, or continue that conversation that we started last time when Lauren was here. Alrighty, now let's shift gears just a little bit, and let's go ahead and get into today's monologue. And again, it's a flashpoint, and flashpoint is really our guest Austin's term that he uses. I've always called it a kind of an aha moment, or a tipping point, or some kind of a moment when you go, oh my gosh, something has to change. And you make a decision, and a flashpoint or tipping point is the Malcolm Gladwell book, maybe 15 years ago, early 2000s, I think it came out. And Malcolm Gladwell talked about the, more in society, not necessarily for an individual, although I think there were some individual examples he gave too, but more like culturally, how, things go along. There's all these little tiny, minute things that are kind of, adding up. And all of a sudden, it doesn't have to be like that big event, but there has to be some kind of an event that tips you over, and everything changes, and you can't ever go back to the way it was before or after that, after the tipping point, because everything is now differently. You see everything different. And again, his premise is that there's all these little micro events that lead up to it. And then there's some kind of an event that triggers it all, and it all kind of, the deck of cards comes crashing down. And this summer, culturally, our country experienced, tipping points, with the police actions and protests that erupted. So there was events that happened that were like a tipping point culturally, where we became suddenly much more aware of race relations, specifically, policing tactics, And so, that whole thing happened, and it, everybody was affected by it. Now, what I'm going to talk about is more on a personal level, and I believe that that's what our guest Austin is going to talk about. Not necessarily the cultural aspect of a tipping point, but the individual acts. And I remember during my monologue back in August when Austin was with us, I talked about these flashpoints or these moments in my life where I made you make a decision, like something happens, and one of the very first ones or earliest ones in my young professional career was I was out in California for a temporary job, supposed to be there for 6 months, and all of a sudden, like the day before the job starts, I get a phone call that says, "Hey, the job's canceled, and they're going to pay you for 2 weeks and come on home." And I went to the job that next day and found out what was happening, and what the project was being delayed indefinitely, just kind of put on hold, and so there was really nothing to do, other than take care of some of the pieces of the puzzle that had already arrived, to clean up like some stuff, but. And so anyway, I had a decision to make, and the one choice was to go back to Pennsylvania, where I had been spent the first 22 years of my life, or to stay in California. And I remember being out with a group of people that I had just met, people that I was, part of the, some part of the job, and others like kind of connections with people who were part of the job out there. And so these were all brand new people that I didn't really know. And we're sitting there, and I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to stay here in California." And I remember I said that out loud, and I went home that night, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, do I really believe that? Am I going to stay here in California?" Because I said it out loud, and I thought about it. But that moment that I said it, it became kind of like real, that I could actually do this. And so a lot of times we have these thoughts in our heads, but they never get spoken. When you speak them, they suddenly, and your actual real ears, hear them, you go, "Oh my gosh, maybe that's what I should do." So anyway, that was and then of course that's what I did. And of course, I, had to take massive action at that point. I had to, to let people know that I wasn't coming back to that job. I was going to get a job. I had to get a resume together. I had to go find a job. So all these things, like once that tipping point happens, there's like all this action that comes along and follows up after it. I've moved 3 major times in my life, and so those are easy tipping points for me. And moving from California to Montana, that occurred like 27 years after I had moved to California. And I remember I had already bought a couple pieces of property in Montana, and I was over a next 3-year period. I was traveling once a year up to Montana, visiting up there, thinking to myself, someday I'm going to move there. And so I remember it was the 3rd year, and maybe the 3rd or 4th trip that I had made up there, and I was driving back, and I was like, I want to move there sooner than later. I don't want to wait 5 to 10 years. I want to go do this right now. And so I was driving along back from Montana to California, 1,000-mile trip, so plenty of time to think about it. And I remember I stopped in Winnemucca, and I made a phone call, and I said, "I'm going to do this." And I announced that, and that set in motion. And so then there was all this massive action that took place after that. And I ended up moving the stuff that I had from California up to Montana. I took 10 different trips, with a truck and trailer and I essentially moved myself. And I kind of made that a project. It took a year to do it. So, but there was all this action that was going on. And then, you get rid of places that you have in California. And I ended up with an apartment there in California. So I was going back and forth. And so all this stuff, like the decision to move triggered all this, action and, things that you have to do. So that happened. Same thing last year. I talked about the story of me getting rid of things in Montana, and now temporarily staying back in the East again with family. But the idea of the American Gumption dream and vision, and traveling around the country for the next 4 to 7 years, meeting people, basically being a nomad, a digital nomad, working and living from the road. in an RV. So that's all, kind of happening. And of course, the American Gumption Morning Show came along just a few short months ago. And within 3 short weeks, I decided to, from the time that the opportunity came up until I started the show was just shy of 4 weeks. So the decision only took a couple of days, and then there was just a couple of weeks to prepare and get ready. And now here we are at show 65 and into the beginning of the 4th month. And there was all this massive action that had to happen. And then there was all this massive action that occurred in those first couple of months. And now, there's almost like a new, it's ready for more action as the next part of the American Gumption project starts to unfold, and I get ready to, venture out into the country. So hopefully that'll all happen early next year. So I think the point of, the monologue today is just to say that, okay, you can have a tipping point. You can have a flashpoint in your life where you say, I want to do something different. But then you end up having to follow it up with a lot of action, and without the action, it just sort of becomes like a dream, and nothing ever happens from it. So in multiple cases in my own life, I've made these big moves where I moved across the country, several different times. And of course, there was all this action in terms of physical, making it all happen. And these things don't happen like within a week. Sometimes people do that. I know I've heard stories of people saying, hey, I took a job and, I packed up the house, and like within like 1 month, they're completely gone. In my cases, it's always been, it's usually been like a little more, it's always taken much longer than a month for me to accomplish it. We'll just leave it at that. All righty. And then one more example. Professionally, I remember the Bubba Gump example when for 15 years approximately, people had been saying, hey, do you know who you look like? Hey, has anyone ever said you look like Tom Hanks? Oh, you look like the guy from Bosom Buddies. That happened starting in 1981, the same year that I ended up in California. And then that continued on all through the 80s and into the early 90s. And just about every time I went out somewhere, somebody would say, hey, has anyone ever said you look like Tom Hanks? And one of the conversations that always followed up after the initial or one of the questions that always followed up after that initial question of, do you know who you look like? It was, have you ever thought about making any money off of it? Well, for at least 1,000 times I had said, gee, I should make some money off of this. And initially I didn't believe that was going to happen, but I got tired of having the conversation. So when people said, hey, has anybody said you look like Tom Hanks? I'd say, yeah, I'm going to make some money off of it. So when I learned of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company opening up, I had kind of a moment of truth. It was a flashpoint moment. It was a tipping point for me, because I was going to either act on that, take action, or I was going to, put my tail between my legs and pretend that it never happened, and pretend that the 1,000 times that I said, I'm going to make money off of it, even though I said it, not necessarily planning to make any money off of it, but I said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can never say that again if I don't take this action. So, and within a day or so, I called them up and arranged for a meeting, and showed up at the meeting and showed up prepared with a couple pieces of paper, 1, 2, 3, and said, paper number 1 said I could represent you during the grand opening. Number 2 said I could represent you during the 17 openings that you'll do over the next few years. And paper number 3 said I could work for you on weekends, sitting on the bench, interacting with the guests as they come. And ultimately, they hired me for all those things. And I ended up working with them for 15 years. It was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. But in each case, again, that moment occurs, and you just have to take action. And it's usually pretty massive action, or it's significant action, at least to get it rolling. And then there's lots of little small details that follow up. And so it's like kind of continuous action. And so, that's it. I mean, flashpoints, tipping points, good things, but then the action that happens makes those things real and become real. And maybe the flashpoint is the moment when you actually believe it yourself. And once you believe it, then the action doesn't feel like a lot of work. It just becomes something that you have to go do. And I think that in my own personal case, that's how it's been for me. It's always been like where that flashpoint happens, and then you believe it, and then you just start doing it, and it becomes real. It becomes reality. It becomes real because of but until you believe it, you can't take the action. And so you just it's just sort of a dream. It's floating around, but like little tiny things happen, and it keeps happening, and then boom, it happens, and off you go. So that's it. I think that's that kind of is a nice way of wrapping up the first monologue I did when Austin joined us, and we didn't talk about the action. We just sort of talked about that moment when you go, oh my gosh, I got to go do this. And so, alrighty, well, I think Austin is in the green room, ready to go. So why don't we see if we can find him and bring him out onto the American Gumption stage. Hello, Austin J. Haynes. Welcome back. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show.
Greetings, Steve. Greetings, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you, Steve. It's an honor to engage with your guests that might be watching this. I was really enjoying your stories, your flashpoints, your turning points, all the things that happened in your life. And I'm really excited to learn more about you. And I just, again, want to thank Brandon Schaefer for connecting us to be able to create this, and because this is brand new. Like, I really want to honor this moment, because what we're creating here is a new synergy to talk about your story. What's your story? And that's what the main point of these conversations are. It's to share some insights, some stories, but really, how does it translate to you and your American Gumption story? So, Steve, I was really enjoying hearing about your background. It was just fantastic.
Well, terrific. And again, welcome back. Now, if you remember, it was like about 3 weeks ago when you were here, and we had a first-time guest theme song that we played. But because this is not your first time, we are not able to play it. The button that activates that song has been locked out, and I cannot play that. But I do have your bio, and I would like to just reintroduce you with that, and then we'll get into the conversation, and happy to engage because I love this topic. I love the moments when we change, when we have that flashpoint, and everything changes, because it's like the genie in the bottle. You can't put it back in there once it comes out. So
absolutely. I got chills, goosebumps.
All righty. Well, let me just read this briefly. It says, Austin J. Haynes is a life and business clarity coach, an award-winning speaker, and the creator of the Free Will Dream program. Free Will Dream is an experiential self-development program for both personal growth and professional development. The main mission of Free Will Dream is to inspire you to get free, stay present, and move forward. The result for participants is more fulfilling relationships and life satisfaction. A year ago, Austin gave up his very successful 19-year career in corporate America. Why? Because his life purpose suddenly became clear. He had that flashpoint moment, and it was so intense that he could no longer deny it. And yes, he had his own personal flashpoint. Almost 2 months ago, Austin embarked on a many thousand-mile driving trip across America that allowed him to meet and interview ordinary individuals living extraordinary lives. His trip lasted a full month, not 100% sure exact the number of days, but he shared those experiences in the videos and interviews on his YouTube channel. So my declaration is that Austin Haynes has gumption, and he perfectly represents the American Gumption vision, as he is an ordinary individual living an extraordinary life. So, Austin J. Haynes, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that introduction. Absolutely, I'm eager to share with your guests today, Steve. So we can jump right in.
Good. So, the first interview, we kind of did the story of your corporate, experience, 19 years, mostly in sales, a big company in terms of, like Fortune 500 company, and rolling up over the years into leadership positions. So anybody who needs to know that can go back and listen to, let's see, double check. It was show number 52, broadcast originally on October 16th. So then you were out on the road, and you checked in with the program here from the road. I think you were in Tennessee, Memphis, or Nashville.
Probably Nashville at that time.
Yeah. And your hair was longer. You had a little bit of a wild on the road look, and now you're back home. But I would like what was that experience like? Because you were still in it. Now you've been back for a couple of weeks. What did you accomplish with that? What's changed as a result of that?
We could spend a couple days on that. There's many things. It's kind of like being ripped open in a great way. And there was so many things I encountered on the road. And now I think even more than ever, this is a great message. I traveled during the middle of a pandemic when there was a lot of tension happening and people were afraid. The experience that I experienced personally and that I was able to share with people that are in my space were really taken in by it. And it really showed another side of America. And that's why I love your platform, Steve, American Gumption, because once you get through the noise, you find at the heart, there's great people out there that want to do great things, that are doing great things, and sometimes even in small ways. Despite our differences, and despite the differences that were happening during that time, I could really feel this salt of the earth connection with this country, being in the various places that I was in. I never felt threatened. There was a couple of times I had some adversity on the road, but all in all, it was a great opening. And the thing is, perspective is everything. Right now, we need perspective more than ever, and we need to be able to sort through the noise to get the perspective that we know to be true. And once we get that perspective, we are forever changed. I am forever changed by my journey. There's an intense ability to trust when you don't know the answers. Hopefully we can talk more about that today. There's an ability to move when you don't have the clarity, when you feel stuck and you feel plateaued, or you're in a pain situation and you don't know what to do. Can you still move forward? There's a huge element of that, and we can talk about that. And the thing too is that when we are faced with adversity, because I had some adversity on the road, it's very easy to overreact and to get into quick action when that's not always the best thing. So there's lots of lessons that I learned from the road, but the takeaway is just this incredible, heartfelt pride, respect for our great country in the middle of what seems chaotic and tumultuous.
Yeah, I really appreciate your saying that. Twice this week on my monologue, I described the tension that is currently existing, and my short version of it is that there's two extreme ends, and that represents probably 10% over on the one side and 10% on the other side, and that in the middle there is all that commonality, and there's all that goodness and all that stuff that unites us. And it seems like people are just focusing on the opposite ends instead of all the common good that happens in the middle. And I think that American Gumption is exactly that. We want to find that middle, and we want to do it. So you and I, my friend, are on similar missions. So
absolutely. And I think I'll say one more thing on it, and then I want to get into Flashpoint. But I think if we just recognize that the noise is so loud, and the noise may not be coming from a proper source. Is that fair to say? I mean, so I think we just want to be seekers of the truth and realize that we don't need to just react right away based on some noise that we're hearing. Let's just find the truth. Let's find our truth and make the best decisions that we can make in our respective circle. Because when we do that, that affects the collective. And right. I think it's a great, what you just said is beautiful. Let's find the common area.
Yeah. Well, good. So, so you got back a few weeks ago, and it sounds like you've begun to have a little bit of clarity, because we're doing something, it's hard to see, exactly what's happening. And you talked a little bit about, challenges and adversity, but never feeling threatened. So, it wasn't like a scary moment. It was just like things things come up and you have to deal with certain things, whatever they may be. Where do you see yourself, going next? Because that was part of this journey, and we know that you have the event coming up, but you personally, did you have any flashpoint moments since you've been back in terms of like clarity about exactly how you're going to develop your brand?
Yeah, so let me talk about the purpose. The purpose of my trip was to bring inspirational places, faces, and traces to people so they can see another side like we just talked about. But let's talk about Flashpoint. I just want to create some more clarity around Flashpoint, what that means for you. And I will tell you that the message of Flashpoint is evolving. It's not a static thing. But let me just give you the definition of it. So Flashpoint is a critical moment, place, or event at which someone or something bursts forth into activity or existence. So Flashpoint has a multiple meaning. I was just reading this morning from Mark Twain, The Turning Point of My Life. And what that writing says is that none is more valuable than the next. The moment you have today that you might feel awkward and uncomfortable, but you nail a moment down or you have a moment, and then the moment when it seems like everything makes sense, they're equally as valuable. What I want to convey to you that Flashpoint is, I believe Flashpoint is the moment, the visceral moment, the emotional moment when you realize that you've made it. And so I'll give you an example. The one example that comes to me, music is a great way to share that example. So Elton John, before Elton John was a huge success, he was a musician over in the UK. He had small levels of success. He obviously had a songwriter. He had a music label. He produced his music, had local success. Well, what happened was Elton John got booked at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, his first American concert, a smaller venue. He comes over here and plays. And within months after that, he's a global phenomenal success. So I liken that to a flashpoint moment where you're doing the work and you're having your turning points. You're having these moments where you're getting these breakthroughs, even if you feel awkward. And then you get that phone call, you get that approval. He gets that call to come and play that concert. And then after that, it's like skyrocket into success. So that was the original intention of Flashpoint. However, it's evolving. There could be a Flashpoint moment, and I know Steve referenced it as a turning point, where it says in the definition where someone bursts forth into activity. It doesn't say someone tiptoes. It says when someone bursts. So when you have a Flashpoint moment, yes, it could be that critical success. But for you, it could also be, it's a very strong emotional response that is heavily driven by purpose, and you burst forth into activity. It can't hold you back anymore. And actually, it's the third concept that I wanted to discuss today. But I'm going to pause for a minute, Steve, because I want to let you kind of reflect on this, and then I can get deeper into that if you want.
Yeah. When we have these moments, well, let me back up. People want predictability in their lives, and they kind of want, and so it's almost like an opposite of allowing a flashpoint moment, because you get used to or comfortable with like the routine of the way things are. Yes. So you're going along and you're almost like, like avoiding flashpoint moments sometimes. And, yes. And some people, embrace those flashpoint moments and go for them. And other people, like just want to kind of, live a, predictable life where, they don't have to take maybe massive action to change anything. It's just sort of a, a routine. What do you think is the difference, or what do you think, why do some people crave that and look for that and other people maybe avoid it? And is it something that they're really avoiding, or is it something that just, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why. Do you have any theories on that?
Yeah, Steve, excellent question. This is like perfect what you just brought up, by the way. It's absolutely perfect, because this is one of the concepts in Flashpoint. It's called the uncertainty threshold. And we go through this in depth so people can get a greater understanding of what's driving them. Because we operate on autopilot, and you said it. A lot of times we block off what's in our own best interest. We block off a potential flashpoint moment because of some level of predictability that we are living in. Because I'm just going to say it. I mean, our society is addicted to predictability, and every extreme has its faults. So the more predictable your life is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you don't have the ability to get in an uncertain space and experience the juice of life, you're going to shut off what you most need to grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And one of the things that in my own life, I always felt the most alive when I was in the middle of a change. I remember early after I was in California for about 6 years, I changed jobs. I had done one for 6 years, and then I changed and kind of careers. I shifted completely. And I remember I felt really alive. And then a few years later, I took that experience and I went into a new job again. And there was always that in between moment when like the old job was over and the new job hadn't really begun. And I felt the most alive at those moments. I realized that. So
beautiful thing. Is it okay if I just honor somebody real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anilda's on here. She's been to a lot of my events, and she follows a lot of the content I put out there. She's an amazing soul. So I just wanted to honor her for being on today. And she's actually going to be at the event that we're having. She does a lot with fitness and wellness. So she's going to be there at the event as well. So
great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nilda, for joining in with us this morning.
Yes. Absolutely.
So So what is the, so we're talking about the idea that people are, like some people are adverse to this radical change, and then other people, embrace it. And I've always been a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in terms of like, I've looked for those things. And, at some point, like if things are going too predictable, you sort of, disrupt things. And what's a good disruption and what's a bad disruption? Because you talked about it where you said, people, are just reacting because they feel like they got to do something. And yet stepping back, taking a deep breath, calmly moving forward, instead of just like wildly flailing and going for it. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I'm going to head into this in more detail at the event, but basically there's two forces that I think are going to move you forward. And one of them is pain and the other one is purpose. And pain is something that when we're unconscious maybe we're neglecting something, we know it, but we're just afraid to deal with it. And we've all heard this. Life comes along and boom, it smacks us. We've all been smacked by life. Is that fair to say? We've all been smacked in the face by life. Maybe it was something we had nothing to do with. Maybe we just had some neglect and we got smacked. And both of those things will lead to change at some level. Now, what I want to do with people, Steve, is I want to get them into purpose. And that's actually the third point, because here's what I know. And this is what this program I created was for myself first, is that if I can work with you and intensify your purpose enough, action is the fruit of it versus me trying to force you to do something. The lower your purpose is, the more force that's required, but force is not sustainable. It will burn you out over time. What is sustainable is intense purpose, and action is the fruit of that.
Who's the purpose guy? His famous book,
Purpose-Driven Life.
Yeah, no, anyway, I'm blanking on his name right at the moment, but the idea of purpose has been elusive, and I'm speaking from my own experience. We've been encouraged to have our purpose, and I, wasn't able to really feel like I've stepped into my purpose until the last, year or two with the American Gumption Project. I had like the 15-year run as Forrest Gump, and that was like certainly a fun, wonderful time of my life. But I also knew that like there was something going to happen after that. And then I went into the speaking Gump phase of my life, where I developed my motivational message and the principles of Gumption and the life lessons from the movie, and, learning how to stand up on a stage and present and give, and then be a host for conferences and events, emceeing. So kind of all of these skills, but I never felt like it was my purpose. And then the American Gumption Project kind of flashed into my head, like in the last, year to 2 years. And so now this feels like purpose. But all that time before that, I was trying to define a purpose, and it felt elusive. I could never, like, I'd be like, well, maybe this is my purpose. And you try that for a while, and then you're like, well, maybe this is my purpose. And then you go, well, maybe this is my purpose. And
yes.
And so how do you help people, figure that out? Because sometimes we're just not ready. Maybe we're just not there yet. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. So number one is to really discover your drive. What are your needs? What's driving you, right? That's number one. Like, what are your top needs? Because that dictates what people do. Their top needs dictates what they do. And then number two, we have a test that we run people through to discover what their top talents are. Because it's proven that if somebody, you could be in doing work that we know is in alignment, and it's your skill set, heart set, mindset, we know that that's going to be a very productive place for you, and you're going to be happy you're doing it. It's sustainable. It has, and so once you know those things, the other thing is, again, we're talking about uncertainty. Reaching your flashpoint is actually a very uncertain process. And that's why too few people have it. But once you nail down the key ingredients, the flashpoint becomes the fruit of it, but you have to be flexible in the process. And that is the key. Bruce Lee said, be like water. I mean, these are fancy slogans, but they mean something. We've lost the ability collectively to be flexible in our approach to our purpose. We feel like we have to know the answers. We have, and again, I'm not saying that's not important. Those things are important, but they become more valuable when you can add flexibility in them and your ability to shift. And another factor is being able to connect with whoever you're working with, because you can have a great idea that nobody connects with, and it's just you. So you have to be able to connect with people and let them reflect it back to you. Because then it starts to grow, and it starts to shift, and it starts to change. And there's that flexibility where it's like giving birth to a baby.
COVID could be, this wonderful gift that we've all received, because we all have been forced to stop and, break our routine, settle into a bit of a new routine, a virtual routine, so to speak. And yet things will begin to, evolve and open up and change, but they won't go back to being the way they were before. They'll evolve into something new. So what would you say to somebody who is feeling lost at this time, or, like maybe, a victim of this, because there's a lot of victims from this, this time. There's industries that have been decimated. And so if somebody's listening and they're like, well, gee, maybe it's time for me to make that shift. And of course, the thing I would suggest to them is that they probably, know in their heart already what it is, but they've been afraid to, or they haven't had a chance to express it and open up. So, I guess I'm questioning, how can somebody who isn't quite sure what this next step benefit from what you're doing here, and of course your event's coming up in a few weeks. And
so there's the novel. I think it's a Tale of Two Cities, right? And the opening line is, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times."
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that I've experienced both of those things in my conversations with people. I've talked to people who are thriving, the best of times. I've talked to people who are struggling, upset, depressed. It was the worst of times. And in between, you have every flavor in between. My invitation is to be, and this is one of the key things I wrote down here, is that this, and then I'll talk about my event. Clarity is an outcome. It's not necessarily a prerequisite. If that's true, and I'm not saying you don't have any clarity, you need some clarity to get going, but sometimes your clarity is just a gut feeling. And I know you've experienced this. And you got this clarity of feeling and you just go, boom, you're into action. So once you get that, then it's to take a step, right? Flashpoint Live 1.0, which we're doing December 4th and 5th, and I'll tell you about a special thing we added. That's a step that you can take without knowing what your purpose is, without having all the clarity, without knowing all the answers, with coming in with your uncertainty and doubt and going, this is a step I can take. This starts my journey. Because when you get around not only me, but the people there, you will get perspective. You will be changed. I can promise, I can't promise I'm going to solve the world, but I can promise that anybody who shows up will walk away better than than when they came in. I can absolutely guarantee that.
Yeah, I think it's you surround yourself with other people who are going through something similar, and it becomes contagious. And one person has a breakthrough, and when you witness that there's a breakthrough, then you're more likely to speak what it is that is maybe just below the surface. And again, one of the examples I've always used is the feather is the opportunity. The Forrest Gump feather lands at the feet, and it's the opportunities that come into our lives, but you have to reach down and pick them up. And so, when other people are finding their feathers, then that makes it easier for you to, to find yours.
I love it. I love the whole analogy of the forest. I absolutely love it. Now I'm hoping you can be at the event. It would be fantastic. But yeah, I mean, to your point is exactly right. And this is an opportunity. And I found that, again, it's the community. The people that are there could have a greater impact on you than I will. Like, I'm just facilitating it. That's all. I'm basically a glorified facilitator. When you get in this space and you meet people like Anilda and my Emilio from Spiritual Fitness Academy and these people, you will be changed. Guaranteed.
Nilda says that she feels the most, or she likes the idea that the most alive in the middle of that change, and really that's that was something that I kind of was like, oh my gosh, I feel alive. So it was like this has happened 25 years ago, and you don't know, but now you become aware of it, and you go, oh, change can actually be a good thing. Change can actually make me feel more alive on a regular basis, as opposed to trying to keep things the status quo. And so, what if we look at this situation of 2020 as just a great opportunity? And, it's maybe that initiative that we needed to make the change in our life. So
I want to invite every single person in earshot of this to, even if you can't accept what Steve just said, take it, write it down, and don't forget it. And see if it can, between now and the end of the year, see if there can be more depth and breadth to what he just said, so that regardless of what this year has been for you, what if by the end of the year, there's a new opening? What if you got more clarity? What if you got around the right people? What if you felt that gumption that Steve talks about every week, every day? What if that could be real for you? And I want to invite everyone that, again, even if you don't feel it right now, just embrace the possibility that it can happen. Just say, it's possible that I can tap into something like that. And I think that's the invitation. If you don't have it figured out, just stay with it, even if it feels uncomfortable, awkward, doubt, scary, fear, all of those emotions, because they all exist for all of us at varying levels. And, when we're engaged in conversations like this in community, it makes it so much easier and better when we're together.
I forgot to change the banner on the bottom, but I updated it now so that it has your website, austins360.com. That is where people should go who want more information about the event. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, they can go there. I'll put the link. I believe I have the event link there, but if not, we will share it in the comments, and I'll make sure that somebody can get to the event from that page.
Great. So tell us about the event specifically, because you're planning to do a live event. You're planning to practice social distancing. And I guess there's always something could happen between now and then, but tell us what you're planning to do. And it's like the first weekend in December. So tell us all about the event itself and what people could expect.
Well, there's good news. We have a limited seating for the live event in person, but the feedback that I've received, we have 13 tickets sold already. People want to engage despite the challenges. We also have a stream ticket that we've made available.
Okay.
Flashpoint, the experience, is going to take place Friday and Saturday, December 4th and 5th. The change, Steve, is that I've had people reach out to me about relationships. So I'm happy to say we've added a third day and another ticket for Relationship Day. And what I'm doing is, for anyone who gets that ticket and comes in person, I've actually created this piece of wall art.
Here, let me put you on screen and you'll have a little more room to.
So I know it won't do it justice, but basically this is the symbol for peaceful power. It's a Japanese symbol. And so anyone who registers for the Relationship Day or the entire weekend is going to get one of these for free. I created this. This is my design. And the idea is that even in the storms of life and relationships, we can take steps to remain in a state of peaceful power. We might feel it, we might shake, we might quake, but we can still get deeper and harness the power inside of us and have a sense of peaceful power. And that's basically what that is, so that everybody who registers will get one of those as a reminder they can take with us. If you register for the streaming event, we are going to figure out a way to get you that print. We'll give you some instructions on what to do to get it into a frame for yourself and hang it on your wall.
Great. So the first 2 days, what's going to happen then? And then the third day is the Relationship Day. Just sort of differentiate them and what people could expect, in each event.
Yeah. So the first 2 days is going to be all about Flashpoint. It's about creating your turnaround story. It's about going through what drives you, what really drives you. We're going to get into some of the things that might be holding you back and how to get free from those. We're going to talk about your talents and abilities. And we're also going to get into your purpose a little bit. We're going to start that process of what is your purpose? What does this mean? What does this chapter of your life mean as you move forward? There's going to be, and we do, it's more of an experiential event too, by the way. I want people to experience. For me, like head knowledge is not enough. We do different things. We use different modalities to help people get an experience, Steve, as opposed to, I don't know about you, but I don't like sitting in a chair too long. It's just hard for me to do. So we do a lot of things to make this a very interactive, experiential type of event, so people walk away with something profound and powerful for them.
And if someone is interested in attending, where is it going to be held? Obviously
in Cherry Hill, which is right outside of Philadelphia.
Okay, so if you're in the Northeast, you can get there easily.
Yeah, easily. They just redid the venue. They have all the chairs are spaced out. They're sanitizing the rooms. But I would just tell people this: if you're uncertain, like if you're somebody who's like really uncertain about this COVID thing and you'd rather not go, then just get the stream ticket. That's all. You gotta do what's in your best interest. If you feel like, well, I want to go, but I just don't feel safe, then get the stream ticket. If you're somebody who's like, I've had it, I want to get out, I want to get in around live people, I would take action quickly, because those tickets are going to sell out, because people want to come. There's a handful of people that really want to come and experience something live and in person again.
And I think you're going to limit it to what, like 20 or 25 people?
Right around 20. And I have a couple extra seats just in case.
Okay.
For the event. And then the Relationship Day is on Sunday. That's where we're going to do a free communication assessment to help people understand the way they're communicating, their style of communication. And we're going to dedicate that day to relationships, so that people leave, they're going to have some better ways to approach their relationships, because that's a big deal right now too.
The relationship assessment, I mean, how does that work? What is that something you lead us in, or?
Yeah. It's a very simple process. It takes about I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to complete it. But the conversation that ensues after could take hours, depending on where the audience takes it.
Great. Well, that sounds like that's going to be wonderful. So what else should we, share and talk about at this point? We have just a few minutes left in the show. What do you feel like, what would be valuable to share at this point?
I would just say this, Steve. I encourage people to take action, be an activist in your own best interest, because when you do that, you're going to affect your community, your family, your friends. And I just encourage people to take a step. That's all. Of course, I want you to be a part of my event, but if not, what is in your best interest? What is the next best step for you at this particular point in time? What is the next best step for you? That's what I would like to leave people with. And coming to this event, either stream or live, is an option for you. That's it.
One of the things that I've really begun to understand the last few years is the idea that all of the past things that have occurred are interesting and are certainly part of the history, but they really don't have a lot of bearing on what we decide to do going forward. But we make them into things that kind of hold us back. And I did a monologue a week or two ago about the albatross of things that I had, like stories and physical stuff that were literally holding me back. And so, releasing those things, whether it's just like an emotional release or a physical release, either or, will allow us to move more powerfully into the future.
And if you come, you're going to experience that. You're going to experience that release. I mean, we're going to make it happen. I mean, I'll tell you, this is like Flashpoint. Like, this is an experience. I know I'm kind of calm here, but we are going to create an experience for you. And regardless of your personality, there's a place for you. So if you're excited and you want to get up and make it happen, there's a place here for you. If you're more like chill and you want to observe, there's a place here for you.
All righty. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll put the links for the event in the show notes and in the in the comment section for on the American Gumption page and on the YouTube channel. So I'll make sure those get put in there. Anybody who wants to participate should just visit that page and then either join by coming in person if you're in the Northeast or become a streaming event for you.
Absolutely, Steve. And Steve, thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure to hang out with you and have these candid conversations. And I think they're so needed. And, why not let this go viral? Right? Look at all the stuff that goes viral. Let this go viral. Like, you got two people here want to make a difference, putting out a positive message, getting to the heart of the American gumption. Like, that's what matters, because we're going to make it. We're going to be better no matter what. It may be chaotic. It may be tumultuous. We're going to do it because we're Americans. We're going to make it happen.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, I think that we'll wrap it up at this point. Thank you so much for joining us. Please come back again, and we'll see you in December at the event.
Absolutely. God bless everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Austin. All righty. Well, that was wonderful. I'd like to just sort of wrap it up by saying that I've been someone who's attempted to do it alone most of my life. I went to California alone. I went to Montana alone. But when I decided to leave Montana, I decided I needed to go back out and connect with people. When I was in the Bubba Gump days, I was meeting 1,000 people a day, sitting on the bench, interacting, and I felt very connected to people. Because I got that steady dose of it. But the reality is that I was living a life, focused primarily on myself. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not condemning that, but not necessarily, looking to be involved with others in a way that makes a meaningful difference. And the American Gumption Project really was that awakening to the fact that I need to go back out into the world, and I need to connect with people, and I need to be part of, some different communities on a regular, ongoing basis. And so that's what we're doing here. We're building the American Gumption community, and we're connecting with people like Austin who are making, making a difference in it. Let's see. Anilda says that the pandemic has also helped us face our limitations and do something about it. Absolutely. We have a choice to go forward. We can go forward in a way that allows us to create our own future, or we could be someone who just sort of sits back and waits for, the future to come to us. And I think that I choose to be the one to go out to it. And repeating a line from earlier this week that I did during the monologue was, I knew that when I was leaving Montana, a friend of mine said, "I feel like you're running away." And because I valued his opinion, I went home and I thought about it, and I went, no, I'm not running away. I'm actually running towards, because what I need to do is out there. And so I guess I would ask everybody, are you running towards in your life? And is this pandemic an opportunity to run towards the next thing that you need to do or you want to do in your life journey? So, alrighty, that was a pretty good show. That was fun. I really appreciate Austin joining us. I want to just wrap up and let's see. I'll do. I got a new idea for closing out my shows. I've been putting the last week. I've been doing a little graphic, and basically the American Gumption, we the people, ordinary individuals living extraordinary lives, and finding some kind of a picture that goes with those words. And so I found this. We've got that Friday feeling, and I thought, this is a good. And I made the comment when I posted this. It said that some weeks are more exhausting than other weeks, and this was a tiring week in many ways, just because of the noise that Austin talked about. So don't let the noise get you down. We got a Friday feeling going on here, and we're going to have a strong weekend, and we're going to come back and we're going to have a great week next week. That's my attitude. Alrighty, so next week on Tuesday, Lauren Archer is going to rejoin the American Gumption Morning Show, and we'll continue the conversation about heart coherence. So getting the mind and the heart in sync, and then that's where we can really get that alive feeling going. So she will talk about that, and she's planning to do a meditation. The plan is to go live 5 days next week. I do have a guest on Friday, and the other days I'm still figuring out who will join us. So that's it, everybody. Have a great weekend. Appreciate your being part of the show. We will see you next week.